Hey guys, and welcome back to Dan's Pro Shop. If you haven't put it together by the thumbnail, today we are working on this thing. This is like a hitch-mounted dirt bike rack thing. So I'm sure that you guys are familiar with these, but if you aren't, I'll put in some stock photos here. Now that you kind of know what's going on here, you may be able to put together the conundrum and what we're doing today. Whenever you have a full-size bike hanging off the back of a pickup truck or an SUV or something, they tend to really cover your tail lights. So, in an effort to get in front of a problem before we actually have one, I am going to install some strip LED lights on that thing that just plug into the 4-pin trailer plug on the truck. That way I have brake, tail, and turn lights on the rack. So when and if I get rear-ended at a red light, at least I have a foot to stand on saying that I tried to prevent that. So enough jaw jacking. Let's get into it and go through the parts list. So guys, as far as parts go, it's not very involved. I mean, we're going to use a bunch of shop crap laying around here too and do a little bit of soldering. But this is just one of those LED strip lights that like you see that people put underneath the tailgate in their pickup truck and it just plugs into the trailer plug. Same thing, 16 bucks on Amazon. By the way, everything that I'm using here today, I got on Amazon. That rack thing included. I will put everything down in the description in case you're interested in just picking up one of these things or doing this whole gig. So throughout figuring out this project, I found that this strip light only has about 3 foot of lead on it, which for what I'm planning to do is not sufficient. So I got a 4-pin trailer plug like extension. Yeah, we'll go with that. And this one is significantly better quality than the one that comes on the strip light. Like this actually has like a good insulated jacket on. And for what I want to do, that's going to make a world of difference. Because after I mount this thing onto that, I'm going to drill a hole into it since it's hollow aluminum. I'm going to run the wires through it and then just put a little pigtail that comes out and actually plugs into the trailer harness. So I feel like this is going to be a good install. And one last little thing here, I got me a kit of rubber grommets. I think this was like $7 on Amazon. I had some laying around here, but it was either too big, too small, whatever. This thing is like a 300-piece assortment of everything that you're ever going to need, and you buy this once, you'll probably have it for 20 years. So I guess let me lay this thing out and give you guys a better, yeah, we'll see. So guys, the plan here. You can see that this is the receiver side, this is the end that sticks out, and the tie downs for your ratchet straps. So the way that this one is configured, the cutout for the front tire of the bike will be on the driver's side of the truck. That's just the way that it worked out. I don't know if they're all like that or just this one, but whatever. So this is the strip light that I'm talking about. This one in particular, the one that I'm going to link, the plug goes on the driver's side. And you can tell this by plugging it into your truck first and turning on and off your turn signals so you know which side is right whenever you put this thing together. So the plan, I'm going to string this thing across the back here, and just so happens this thing is 60 inches wide and this is 72 inches long. So it works out well. Where this thing lands, I'm going to drill a hole in it, put a grommet in there, and then run all the wires through this aluminum tube down into the receiver tube, out that end, drill another hole with another grommet, pull the wires out there, and then that's where my pigtail is going to be to go into the truck. So I guess let's do some measuring, make sure we get this thing in the middle because, you know, aesthetics matter, and then start drilling some holes. Alrighty, after some more investigation, I found that the numbers I gave you earlier were a little skewed. Apparently the description isn't spot on. So this thing is 75 tip to tip, and this thing is 60 and a half. So if my math is right, 75 minus 60 and a half is 14 and a half, divided by 2 is 7 and a quarter. So that is the gap that we need from each end. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that on the ends, and I know that this thing will be centered. Go ahead and take our trusty ink stick here. Let's see, we got 7 1/4 and 7 1/4. Now, if all that lines up, whenever we put this thing on here, she should be spot on right in the middle. But first, we are going to lop off these factory wires since we are replacing it with the better pigtail. And I'm going to put some heat shrink where these wires go into this thing. So not only will it protect it from the weather and chafing, even though we're putting a grommet in, but I think it'll look a lot better. And then we're ready to blast some holes. So guys, like I mentioned, take your brand new thing that you just bought, lop off this plug end. We ain't going to need it. I'm going to go ahead and throw some heat shrink tube over here, a good length, about 6 or 8 inches or so I know it's plenty well in the tube and good and covered. So I got myself some shrinking tube here. If I had to guess, this is probably 5/8 ID, something like that. After you fight with this for so darn long. Holy cow. Let's just go the other way. Life's only as hard as you make it, folks. Cool. So, if you guys can see here on the end of this thing, there's already about 2 inches of dead space. I'm going to cover about half of that or so, and then I'll have about 4 or 5 inches of the heat shrink that's actually going to go into the frame. So I think it's going to turn out pretty good. We'll take our trusty Radio Shack electrical heat gun with the fancy little wraparound thing. Send her to time. That's a nice. So now that we got that all done, take us a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and just wipe down our sticky surface. Because there is nothing that's clean enough to just accept the sticker. I mean, look at that garbage. Do everything you can to help yourself. Why not? I mean, let's be honest. I'm probably going to wrap some zip ties around this anyhow whenever it's all said and done. But either way, try to make it better, man. If you're doing it once, do it right. So lucky for us, well, for me, if you didn't just wipe off your Sharpie marks with the alcohol, I definitely didn't do that. But now we know where this thing's supposed to go. Start peeling back the 3M adhesive that's already on this thing. Do a little bit at a time. My plan is I'm going to keep this thing right about in the center of there to like the bracket to the top of this thing. So I need to know I need to keep about 1/4 inch or so away from the top. We'll just start this thing and go on down the line. A little bit at a time, no rush. Whew. I will be a monkey's uncle if we didn't land perfectly on those marks on either side. It's almost like we planned it that way. Now, for some of the more astute viewers out there, you may see that I covered this hole where there used to be a bolt in. Like, hey guy, maybe you need that bolt. What's up with that? You covered it, now you can't use it. Nay, this bolt simply makes the front tire slot smaller. If you want to put like a mini bike or something on here, But we're not doing that. This is made for a big bike. So I'm not going to use that. It's fine and dandy. But here, where we just put the heat shrink around the wires, I'm going to come out about 2 inches or so. So I have a nice gentle curve, blast a 1/2 inch hole in here, put a grommet in, and that's where my wires are going to go inside of the frame. So we're over here at our nice $7 kit here, and I stand corrected. This is the wire that we're going to be concerned with encapsulating, right? So these grommets are going to be absolutely freaking perfect. And the drill size for these, according to the chart, is 7/16. So let's get that ready. So we'll head on over here, get ourselves some stuff. Good old drilling device and a 7/16 drill bit, which is a weirdo. But luckily, we got an index with 7/16 drill. And I think to make lives easier on ourselves, because you know, starting a hole this size with that bit might be a little much. You know, you got to take her to dinner first and get her warmed up. So I'm going to take a 1/4 inch drill bit, do a pre-drill, then send it home with the 7/16. So now we got our 1/4 inch pre-drill. Like I said, we're going to go about 2 inches or so away from the end of this thing. We'll go ahead and start a pilot right in about the middle of that thing. So now we got our 7/16 in there. You see how right at the end there I stopped and went in reverse? That's just from doing this. You can kind of feel when a drill bit is at the end of a hole, and then you get that where you break your shoulder. You know, it's just that's a feel thing. So we're going to go ahead and deburr this and throw a grommet in there. But before we do that, I think I'm going to drill the hole in the receiver on the other side of this thing and run the wire through backwards. That may require some disassembly because we're going to have to drill holes through here too. But I'll show you how that happens, but I'm not going to walk you through the whole thing because that'll just be horrifically time consuming. But I'll show you what's going on regardless. So guys, the plan, like I briefly explained, the wire is going to come through this hollow tube here where it intersects with the hitch part. I'm going to mark on the inside of this thing and on the tube in the same location, and then use this same 7/16 drill to put a hole in the bottom of this and the top of this. So I have a path for my wire to go through here and out next to the hitch in the truck where I want to. So I'm just going to mark a line here. It doesn't matter. This is like Bob Ross. There is no wrong here because it's all going to be hidden anyway. Now this, because it's kind of like a sitting on top fit, we're not going to be able to put a grommet in here. Hence why I wanted the better wire with a good jacket. But I mean, I really don't think it's going to be that big of a chafing issue. This isn't like a suspension component or anything. And let's be honest, this is an add-on. It doesn't even need to be there. But I'm doing the best I can to make it the best I can. If you're doing this, you do you. But this is the way I'm doing it. So now we have this thing marked. Just go ahead and take this thing out of here. Maybe. If you guys buy this thing, you will have to put it together yourself anyway, so you'll know how this works. But now you can kind of see what I'm going for. A hole in the bottom of this, a hole in the top of this, and that gives us a route for the wire. Let's just keep drilling. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this from there, but where I put this mark, where it ends, I know is the end of that thing. So I'm going to go in here in the middle. Whoop. I'm going to go in the middle of that thing, and then I know the hole's in the middle. So again, we'll start with our 1/4 inch pilot. Send it. Uh-oh. You go ahead and put that anywhere. Nice. 7/16. Now, you guys obviously don't need to use a 7/16 for this. I'm just doing that because that's the grommet size that I chose to use. If you have one of those drill indexes that only go up to like 3/8 or something, by all means, that will work. But your drill bit size is contingent on the grommet you use if you choose to use a grommet. Either way, you see what I'm getting at. So here is the bottom of this thing. That mark will line up with the mark that we just drilled. Same thing yet again. Come on. I'm going to go right on that line and right in the middle. Now, if some of you people are layout fellas, you may be freaking out at how not perfect I'm doing this. But the wire that I'm using is an OD of 5/16, and this thing is 7/16. So there's plenty of egress. I'm not that concerned about it. Sweet. Like I said, we're going to deburr this, so I might just slap a uni bit in here to get a bit of a chamfer. Nice. It's like one you'd buy from a store. Brilliant. Cool. It's good to do a little cleanup to keep up with ourselves. Remember, guys, a clean workspace is a happy workspace. So, guys, now we're at the point where we can start fishing some wire. So, my goal here is I'm going to take my plug that only has a plug on one end, start fishing it through from this side, go up through there, and then finally terminate into the aluminum part. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to manage this at the moment. I mean, this tube is hollow, so you can get in there with something. But you may end up doing like the old electrician's trick, you know, like put a washer on a string and drop it down there so you got something to tug on. But either way, put some grommets in these holes, which I know work because I did this one. Real nice and snug. Gonna be awesome. So we'll get it through this and then just kind of do this as it goes. So now that I got the wire run down through here, it's time to do a little fishing. See if I can't get it to come out this other side. Oh. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter if we mess this up because there's plenty. We're going to cut it anyway. Nice. Now that that's through, we can get it through the aluminum part and keep going. So I'm going to leave about 12 or 16 inches sticking out of the end of here because you guys can see here, this is where the receiver pin is, and I only need to go up to the plug on the bumper right here. So I feel like this is more than enough, but we can play with it once everything's put together. Now this is the part that may take some patience. We need to get this guy strung through the hole that we just bored down here. But let's just see how it goes. Heck, we got this one done. It can't be that bad, right? All right, there. I felt it hit the end of the tube. So now we got to do some fishing down here and get that one. I'll get on this side this time so you guys can get a little better view. Your handy dandy mechanics wire. Put a couple bends in it. And I can see that wire right there. I just need to get it up to where I can reach it. Oh, oh. There we go. I got it in my wire. Let's pull it out to the ends here where we can grab it with some needle nose. Oh boy, howdy. There we go. I got a bite. There's a couple pieces. Like I said, I'm not worried about damaging the end of this thing because I'm going to cut off some slack anyway, and we're going to have to strip it back to do our soldering connections. Feed a little slack, start yanking through. That's awesome. Now, we don't need to pull a bunch of this through. Just pull enough through to make your soldering life easier. Because we're going to strip this back about a couple inches or so, do our soldering, and then put all that crap back inside of here. And then we can pull our extra slack back out of the tongue side. So then we have extra. So upon further investigation of the stock here, I may have fibbed to you a little bit. We're not going to solder. We're going to kind of solder. I have these solder heat shrink connections, which I will find a link for these and put these in the description also. So in case you're not the soldering type of fella, you can get this done with a butane torch or a heat shrink gun. I will show you these things up close and we'll do this together. So these are those solder connectors. These are similar to crimp style connectors if you guys have seen those before, but this ring in the center here is low temp melt solder. So whenever you heat this thing up to shrink it, this solder actually melts into the wire connection and makes a really good solid connection. Now obviously this is not as good as actually soldering, but I've been using these things for a long time, and like on equipment and tractors and stuff, and these things work great. They're really good for harsh environment applications. So that harness that we just yanked through here, go ahead and cut some of the insulation back. My favorite Klein banana cutters here. Oh, nice. Now we got all that garbage off of there. And we can cut off the ends that we damaged through yanking. Now, you guys may be saying, hey Dan, there are 4 wires on the harness you pulled through, and there are 5 on this light. What's the deal? This light, like I mentioned earlier, is meant to go on a pickup truck. So this red wire, the odd guy out, this is for a reverse light. So this thing will just turn on bright white. Now, by all means, if you want to, you can hook this thing up. However, you would either need to change this to a 7-pin plug, you know, that big round one, so you have a reverse terminal, or you would need to run a separate wire for this and splice into the reverse light on your vehicle. I really don't care about that, so we're just going to leave this one out in the wind and go ahead and terminate all the other ones. Go ahead and cut off all the slack on those too. Like I said, get this red one out of the way for now. Separate these.
You gotta keep them separated.
Give ourselves plenty of room to work because we got all this nice heat shrink that we've already installed. And now we can install our solder connectors. Now you guys may see that I switched colors here. I realized I had the wrong gauge. Same exact thing, just smaller. But these things are color coded for a reason. So I guess I just overestimated the gauge of this a little bit. So don't forget, slide these things on here first. Let's do some stripping. Cool. Now, this couldn't possibly be any more simple if you wanted it to be. We're just going to twist these together, give ourselves a nice mechanical connection, and then hit it with the heat shrink, solder everything together, and it's a good liquid tight soldered connection. If you guys are curious, I actually made a video about real soldering. Check it out right up here. So now we're back with the trusty old Radio Shack heat gun. Just gonna do these one at a time. Take it easy, guy. We got all day. Now we just got to do that 3 more times. I'll bring you guys in and show you the next one. It's pretty cool. Since these are clear, you can really see that solder moving. So just slide that up right until our solder is in the center of our joint here. Hit it with the heat gun. You guys see how that solder is starting to wick into the fibers of the wire? And that's all she wrote. Let it cool down, that thing stiffens up, and it's a perfect joint. Well, guys, now all of our solder joints are complete, and I'm sure that at least one of you out there was screaming at your screen the whole time I was doing this. Just like flaring a brake line, if you forget to put the fitting on first. Somebody didn't put a grommet in the hole before I soldered all the wire. So I think I'm just going to kind of rig this a little bit and just cut a grommet and then shove it in there. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because I added this heat shrink onto the piece that's going to be going through there. But really, it's more for looks more than anything. But either way, hey, I'm human. I can't believe I did that. So now that that conundrum's out of the way, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap some tape around this for good measure. An absolute unnecessary step, but I'm here. I never plan on getting in here ever again. So might as well take that little step and do it right. And I am just wrapping up that red wire with it. I'm not going to cut it off just in case some future tent. I don't know. Maybe I'll get ambitious / bored one day and want to hook it up. I doubt it because I don't want to get in here and do this again. But either way, it ain't hurting anything just staying there. So I'm going to wrap that up. Push our extra wire back down in the hole. And now I can try to finagle my my janky cut in half grommet in the hole. Well, as my man Derek over at Vice Grip would say, I'll be dipped. That actually turned out pretty good. And I tell you what, this is one of these old timer sayings. It's not perfection that makes the craftsman. It's the ability to hide his mistakes that makes him perfect. Check that out, guys. That actually turned out pretty well. And since I put a slice in the grommet, I just put it underneath there, so it kind of hid my sins. But either way, I think that turned out great. So now we have our slack pulled back through. Get this crap out of the road. Now we need to pull our slack back through the bottom part and start putting things back together. Nice. So I left myself about 2 inches or so of wire sticking there, and the access is just going to push back up inside of this tube. So we'll do this gingerly as to make sure that we don't pinch anything, and start putting her back together. And would you look at that? It's almost like it lines up because we marked it, we measured it. Think ahead, guys, except for the grommet. Start throwing some hardware back in this thing. Put it back together. Well, guys, you can see that I got you flipped around now. And all the extra that was here, I simply just shoved back in the pipe. So it's in here. So in the event I need this thing to be longer, I have about a foot of extra in here. But you see, I got the grommet on there. I remembered that one. I think just for sake of strain relief, I'm going to wrap a zip tie around here so it's pulling on that and not the hole. But either way, we're getting really close to being done here. Give her a little snippy poo. Well, guys, I don't know about you, but I think it's time to try it out. Well, let's just do it. Now, guys, bear in mind, this is a 2.5-inch hitch in my truck, and this is a 2-inch on this thing. So if you have this particular setup, you're going to need one of those reducing sleeves. But just for testing here, I'm not going to bother. Just go ahead and throw this into our 4-pin. Let's see what it does, shall we? Would you look at that? Like we planned ahead, the turn signals are on the correct side. Let's do the other one, pump the brakes a bit. Now, keep in mind, you guys are seeing this for the first time before me. I'm telling you guys. That is nice. So, guys, that wraps up this little project, and thanks for coming along with me. Like I mentioned, if you're interested in doing this for yourself, I will link everything down in the description, whether you just want to get this thing to haul your motor scooter around, or if you want to trick it out with lights. So, I mean, essentially, we just turned $100 and some odd bike rack carrier thing into a probably $200 and some odd bike carrier rack thing. Imagine if you bought this thing with LED lights already integrated into it, just how much that would be. And we spent, I don't know, maybe $30 for the lights and the harness and some odds and ends and everything. Plus, we had a cool little project that we could do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this thing, and keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next time.